Welcome to the Monday Motivation Spotlight, another episode bringing you an inspiring individual in Israel. Today, we have someone who is a household name, who is known around Israel and throughout the world, the incredible one and only Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, who is an internationally recognized Israeli attorney, legal strategist, author, and public speaker. She is best known for her work as the founder and president of Shurat HaDin, Israeli Law Center, which is a non-profit legal organization that uses civil litigation to combat terrorism, terror financing, antisemitism, and campaigns targeting Israel. She also happens to be the mother of 6, including triplets, and in 2016 as well as 2018, she was chosen as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world by the Jerusalem Post and named by the Israeli Financial Magazine, the marker as one of the 50 most influential Israeli women. In addition, Nitsana is the nationally best-selling co-author of the book HARPOON by Hachette Publishers, recounting Shurat HaDin's work with the Israeli Mossad to wage financial warfare against Israel's terrorist enemies. So sit back and listen to this very important and inspiring conversation from Nitsana, where she talks about her work and also her family life. Nitsana, I'm so happy to have you here on our Monday Motivation Spotlight. Thank you so much for being a guest. It's a real honor and a privilege to have you. I've known about you for a long time. You're a household name, and I had the privilege of meeting you in person in the last month, actually twice. And this was the perfect opportunity for me to invite you to be a guest on our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Lesley. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show.
You're very welcome. So as you already are, Baruch Hashem, a household name, people know who you are, people know what you do. Tell us a little bit about Nitsana. Growing up as a girl, you grew up in Israel. Yes, you did study a degree abroad in English. So where did this good English come from? Not every Israeli has such a good English like you do.
I'll tell you the secret. I'm married to an American.
Okay. All right. That's part of the secret, but still not all Israelis, even married to an American, have good English. I'm sure that it also goes beyond that.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Petah Tikva to Zionist religious parents. Grew up in the religious camp and went to high school, went to Bar Ilan University. My degree went to Manchester University, had an MBA. And then in between got married, had Baruch Hashem 6 kids, including triplets. And
I definitely want to hear about the triplets, but that we'll save for afterwards.
Okay. And then when the first Intifada broke out, I already felt that we have to do something. Went to law school, as I said. And when I became a lawyer, we started taking legal actions against some terrorists in high court petitions and representing victims, not necessarily terror victims, but other type of victims like rape victims and people that were chased by the authorities, giving them a voice. And when the Intifada broke out, it was clear, the second Intifada was clear for us that now it's time to go after the terror organizations, their financial patrons, on behalf of the victims.
Well, listen, what you're doing is phenomenal work. And you talk about it as if it's just such a natural thing that everybody can just do this to get into that line of work.
Wow.
So it obviously started somewhere. So Nitsana, growing up as a young girl, did you know that you wanted to do law? Were there any incidences that got you to be passionate about this particular?
Not at all. Actually, I was planning to become a doctor. And I did my national service name again, David, the Israeli Red Cross. But when I learned the long hours that the doctors have to spend, I said to myself, I can't raise a family and grow children with this hectic schedule. I better become a lawyer.
The irony.
What I know now, I'm not sure I would have done this.
Exactly. I was just going to say the irony in your profession right now, not just you're a lawyer, but what you have undertaken and you do trips abroad. I've no doubt that it's probably a lot more work than being a doctor would have been. Not that 100%. We're undermining the doctors in the room.
Not at all. But yeah, I work like 24 hours a day and I travel constantly and be hard for my kids. And it's a very demanding job. but it's very compensating. It's
Yeah,
challenging. It's
absolutely.
fun.
I'm sure it's demanding also physically, but mentally, emotionally, and mentally, it must be very demanding with what you're dealing with. It's heavy stuff that you're dealing with.
100%. Very cool.
Right. So you say, Nitsana, as a young girl, you wanted to be the doctor. Were you exposed to anything in our country or anything that made you decide to go this route? Or that was more when you were an adult?
I lived like the rest of us in the middle of the country, in the middle of a second intifada. And we all knew what we were going to experience, the bus blowing up and suicide bombings and drive-by shooting and ambushes. And we said no more. We said no more. We said, now we are lawyers. Perhaps we can take a role in the war against terrorism by doing what lawyers do best. Go after the party groups of the terror organizations.
So even though you define this important need, once again, not every law officer, not every lawyer decides to go after doing this and do this. So how did you actually get started?
With a lot of courage.
I'm sure a huge amount. I'm sure there were
When
many people that said to you, you're making a mistake and what are you doing?
of course, I said, what are you doing? You want to bring the terror organization into a court of law? The terror organizations that don't care about human life will care about law? And where will you even begin? Who will serve the lawsuits? Where are their offices? Are not on yellow pages. Where are they? And let's say you were able to serve them and bring them to court somehow, or maybe they ignore court, and you get a judgment. What will you do with the judgment? You are going after, this is like Don Quixote war. But I was determined, and so were my friends. And we just waited for the first case to come because we didn't want to lose. We wanted to come and say that we really can fight the terror organizations. And it came sooner than we expected. That were the two soldiers that went to their base in Beth El, made a mistake, and turned into the city of Ramallah. And in Ramallah, we were pulled out from the car by the Palestinian policemen that took them to the police station in Ramallah and lynched them to death.
Yeah, I remember that situation. I remember that
was a situation that was done, in the Palestinian Authority police station by Palestinian policemen. In the Palestinian Authority area, we said there is just a cut and clear case. Palestinian Authority will have to pay a lot of money for this murder. And we went and filed a lawsuit.
That is amazing. That is incredible. Really justice at heart. So this obviously takes many of your cases, I understand, take a long time. This takes and involves a lot of patience and a lot of resilience, not only on your behalf and your team's behalf, but also on the side of your clients. Tell us a little bit about that and the emotions you go through, some of the stress that you go through along the way.
Yes, it's very hard because when I file a lawsuit, I tell the clients, you don't have to be involved. All I needed to do is perhaps testify in court when time comes, but until then, you really not need to be involved so much. And there are clients that want to be very much involved, and they ask them, they're inquiring, and they be in touch with you. And then finally, when you receive a judgment, sometimes it takes maybe 20 years, 22 years. When you get a judgment, now you need to collect it. They really become impatient. And you have to toggle it and to explain that it's not really in your hands, that you initiated the legal action, but now it takes a life of its own. And not always it goes our speed. And I want to tell you, Lesley, that fortunately, there are clients that pass away through the process.
I was actually thinking about that when you said 20 years. I was actually thinking about that. That yes, absolutely. And it's interesting, these clients, when they pass away, is it still sitting on their heads that this case is still going on? Or I'm wondering, do they feel like this little, at least peace of mind that someone is still taking it on for them?
They do, they care, they trust us obviously to continue the work. But for instance, these two soldiers that were lynched, the father passed away. And he said to the mother that when will this proceeding end? Eventually it ended, right? The proceeding ended 2 years ago. But until then, people really had to wait long time. And
had to wait. And the stress of going through this, there's this thing of not being able to let it go when something tragic or something bad happens. Very often, a psychologist will say, let it go. That's your way of moving forward. And when we're dealing with court cases like this, they're not actually letting it go. In other words, it's just always there. It's always the reminder.
Yeah, and this is why the terror victims are very courageous to go into this process, because they know that we have to relive the event. Once you go on the witness stand, and you have to tell the event what happened and how do you feel about it, it's like tearing you from inside. You living the event again and your feelings, things that you push away only maybe in the Memorial Day or Commemorative Day. Maybe then you bring it up again, but during the year you try to avoid it. And here you go, and not only feel it yourself, you have to tell it to third parties. You have to share your internal, emotional, the inside things that perhaps you didn't say anyone, with a judge, with a jury, with a defense attorney of the one that came and killed you. And this is very tough. But the victims are willing to do so, and they do it with great bravery.
I'm sure. What you're saying about reliving the whole thing, I've heard stories that this recording is taking place a couple of days after the 1000th day of October 7th. And I heard that there are many of the hostages that were released that were just starting to come right. Obviously, you never forget, but just to sort their lives out. And then this whole reliving of everything that happened now with 1,000 days also just made it more traumatic for them. Were you dealing with any of these families? Share with us about any of the October 7th families and anything
Yes,
that
I
you
do.
have to deal with?
Yeah, we are presenting more than 500 victims of the October 7 massacre, including families of hostages and hostages themselves. Interesting enough, it's not only by going after those who fund Hamas, right? These victims are suing the Palestinian Authority, and they're suing the Qatari Charity Foundation, and they're suing Iran, those who tunnel money to Hamas and are responsible in a very bad way to what happened on October 7 because of the money that they gave Hamas. Families of the hostages are plaintiffs in lawsuits against the Red Cross, for instance, that abandoned the hostages. They have a claim against the Red Cross for its failure to fulfill its duty and its obligation and to do anything it can in order to visit the hostages, to provide them with the medical assistance that they needed, or to protect them from tortures and rape and sexual assault that we all know they have been through in captivity. And the families of hostages are also plaintiff in a lawsuit against Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, because he again went and betrayed his duty to help the hostages instead of doing anything in his ability to release them. And he had the ability to release. This is what we claim in our lawsuit, that if he would have gone and issued arrest warrants against the leaders of Hamas in Doha, like we asked him to, not against the leaders of Hamas in Gaza, which he did, which is ineffective totally because they're not leaving the tunnels, let alone leaving Gaza. So what they're afraid of arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court. The terrorists in Doha are free to move around. They have a Qatari passport and they negotiated the hostage release deal. And if they felt unsafe because of the threat of arrest warrants, perhaps they would have come earlier and released the hostages. And how do I know that? Because when Israel tried to assassinate them in Doha, they suddenly came forward and released the hostages without any preliminary condition. So this is the role that the families of the hostages are playing.
I'm sure, and not an easy role at all. Share with us, I'm sure you must have some positive, inspiring stories. What you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is heavy, it's high pressure. Do you have any inspiring stories, and I've no doubt you do after all your years of dealing with this, that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, Actually, it's a great victory we just won in the Supreme Court of the United States in a case that we filed in 2004, in the beginning of the Second Intifada. Jonathan Bar was 7 years old. He was walking one day with his father, coming back from a medical appointment in Jaffa Street. And Jaffa Street is a very busy street, and just in front of them was a very tall, wide-shouldered man walking towards them. And they didn't know it was a Palestinian policeman. They also didn't recognize that he was wearing an explosive vest. And then the man looked at Jonathan's eyes and blew himself up. Jonathan was rushed to Shaare Zedek Hospital in Jerusalem, and for 4 days, the doctor had many operations on him, trying to take out all the bolts and nuts and pins that went into his hand and his leg. After 4 days, the doctors woke him up. They told his parents that there is one less bolt remaining in his brain that they are too afraid to take out. Jonathan is disabled for it. Since this wasn't the only terror attack perpetrated by Palestinian policemen, actually, in the beginning of the Intifada, as you recall, there are thousands of terror attacks done assisted by Palestinian workers, people that receive salary and orders from the Palestinian Authority. We wanted to get a judgment from a federal court in the United States before a jury. Who is directing the Intifada? Who is leading this bloodshed against Israelis? Is it a grassroots operation as the Palestinians claim, or it's an intentional, systematic way to kill Jews? So we brought a lawsuit in 2004, trial opened in 2015, and the Palestinian Authority had a defense that said that indeed they were their employees, but they were rogue employees that did the attack after work hours. It wasn't their policy to kill Israelis. They were against killing Jews. But when the trial opened, they found it hard to explain to the jury if they were rogue employees. How do you keep paying their salary until today? They're sitting in the Israeli jail, receiving money from you. You promote them in rank every 3 years. You pay stipends to the families of the suicide bombers. You call town squares on the name of the suicide bombers. This is not how you treat rogue employees. This is not when your policy is against killing Jews. And then when the jury came back from deliberation in the end of the trial, they found the Palestinian Authority responsible for all acts of terrorism and gave us a judgment against them for $655 million.
Wow.
That was back then in 2015. You tell me why I'm telling you about you now.
Right.
Because these judgments were vacated on appeal for lack of jurisdiction, and we had to fight 10 additional years in court and in Congress to reinstate personal jurisdiction and to eventually bring the Supreme Court of the United States to reinstate the judgment. And last month, it was a terrific victory. The judgment was reinstated. The Palestinian Authority had to pay $655 million to the terror victims. And I assure you that we will collect this judgment until the last dollar.
Wow, that is phenomenal. That was actually just going to be my next question, that it's wonderful on its own just to get the judgment, but how easy is it actually to collect? And I'm sure it's not easy at all.
Indeed, in the cases against the Palestinian Authority, we go after the tax money that Israel collects for the Palestinian Authority. This is actually money that belongs to the Palestinian Authority. And therefore, when I have a case, I can deduct it from the tax money. The Treasury in Israel is obligated to do this offset, and this is how this judgment is getting paid. But in terms of Iran, where are the assets of Iran? So we conducted a deep research and found assets that belong to the Iranian government in the United States, bank accounts, buildings. As a matter of fact, we just ended a case in New York against a building that was owned by the Iranian government. It's called 655th Avenue. We put a lien on the building. The Iranian government sent lawyers to fight this case. They lost, and now the building was sold, and the terror victims received $318 million into their hands. So we are tracing assets that belong to our defendant. And finally, the banks, usually the banks, when we sue them, are settling the cases out of court. No bank won judgment declaring that he is aiding and abetting terrorism.
So tell me something to switch a little bit. How does Nitsana, the lawyer, and fighting terrorist organizations suddenly switch off at the end of the day and become a mother, a wife? How does one do that? Talk to me a little bit about work-life balance and just making that shift, because for so many business owners on their own, it's so difficult to switch off at the end of the day. And for you, especially with what you're doing, how do you do it?
First of all, I have an Israeli mother, and she is very, we call it balabuste. And yeah, she comes and helps. She's amazing. She used to watch my kids when I was abroad. She used to come and help. Unbelievable support. I also had a nanny to raise the kids. And I have a great husband that is totally supportive. So I have a step. It takes a village. It took a village.
It took a village, and you have a support network, because without that, it would not be possible to do this. Not only physically, but also emotionally. What happens at your Shabbat table? Do you talk about these kind of things, or does business get left out the door?
We actually do. And it's crazy, but nothing you can do, right? It's like a conversation, and the kids now are grown up. So they are involved. They asking the right questions. They get the answers. I take my kids with me to lectures, on trips, and they know what I do. Listen, in the beginning, it was very, very hard. The kids for
I'm
weeks.
sure. And actually, I wanted to ask you, how did your family feel about you undertaking this enormous task from the very beginning?
Yeah. They were little, my children, and they couldn't understand why I'm leaving them and going for so long abroad. And even though I was coming with piles of gifts and toys and games, it wasn't until this day when I go abroad, my kids are asking me, do you really have to go? So it's heartbreaking. But slowly they understood what Ima is doing, and they're very proud. And very funny, because every time there is a terror attack, every time there is a disaster in Israel, they come to us and say, Ima, can't you do something about it?
In other words, my Ima has the solution. You know, any
Yeah,
problem on
Ima
this
has a
line,
solution.
they come to her.
Ima is fighting terrorists. Ima has a solution for everything.
Yeah, alavai, alavai. Tell us about your triplets. What was it like bringing triplets into the world, and how old are your triplets today?
My triplets today are 21. I have 6 children altogether. My oldest is 27, my second 25. And after the triplets, which are 21, I have a youngest 18. She just finished high school. That's it. I have 3 children in the army.
And it's not easy for parents to have one child in the army in today's day and age. So having 3 in the army is also not easy.
Yes, yes, of course.
So how was it then also bringing your triplets up while you were operating and doing all this?
I'm laughing because you remind me of a story. When I got to my 8 months, on the triplets, the doctor told me that I can't leave. He told me that before, but really in 8 months, said, you are grounded. Don't even think to leave home. And I had a very important hearing in the Supreme Court, High Court petition regarding the suicide bombers and the policy of Israel of targeted killing. Recall, Israel was trying to prevent this suicide bombing by taking these people down before they go and act. And since I couldn't leave home, I filed a request with the court asking them if we can have this important hearing in my house in Petah Tikva.
Wow. You know, I'm a firm believer of don't ask, don't get. So what's the worst they could do? Maximum they'll say no. And they said yes, right?
No, of course. No. They said,
Oh, they said no.
No way. We're not going and doing it in your living room. But the counsel for the petitioners, Victor Feldman, a very prominent liberal left-wing lawyer in Israel, came to me afterwards and said, Nitsana, I need to tell you, this is the bravest emotion I ever saw in my life.
I can just imagine. Can you share anything with us? Any moments that you recall, like the one you've just done?
After we won a significant case for the victims, one of them came to me and told me, "Thank you for letting me fight back. Thank you for getting me my integrity back. Feel I'm no longer a victim." And for me, it was like the most precious thing, as no money can bring back life, but money gives a measure of closure, a measure of justice to the terror victims. They feel they're no longer victims. They have the ability to fight back, and it empowers them. And every time I hear that the terror victims did something great with the money he received that was able to rehabilitate or live better or open a business or buy a new apartment or something, it gives me so much pleasure and so much satisfaction. In the end, we have to remember that the Israeli government takes care of the victims to a certain extent. Every victim received national insurance payments, but there's so little. So when you have like a significant amount of money, it really rebuilds the life of the victims. And that actually what gives me the power to continue on.
To continue doing that, which is so important. And you're right, no amount of money can bring back their loved ones and their lost ones, that it gives them some kind of a closure that they're no longer victims. And sadly, I'm sure as not all cases are one too. So how do these people recuperate and take care of the emotions in those cases? Or if you lose a case, do you then appeal it again? How do you work with these incidences?
Look, we lose a case, we don't fight it again. But we didn't lose a case so far, at least not a case that will close the door on the victims. Because when a terror attack happens, unfortunately or fortunately, you have a lot of people involved. So you don't only sue the terror organization, you can sue the state that sponsored the attack. You can sue the bank that provided them with financial services. You can sue the cryptocurrency company that allowed this terror organization to raise funds. You have a lot of irons in the fire. So even if you lose one case, you still have other cases to go and move forward, and that will make the victims out.
Absolutely. Moving forward, as we come to the end of this podcast, what do you see for yourself, for the victims who you work so bravely on behalf of, Nitsana, moving forward in the future?
I really looking forward for the day that I will no longer do these cases because there won't be any reason to do them. Fortunately, I don't see it coming very soon, and I will continue the fight. I will continue the work of Shurat HaDin as much as needed to support the state of Israel, to support the Jewish community, to allow us to go on the offense against our enemies. It's not only victims, it's also boycotts against the Jewish state and lawfare against the Jewish state and war crime allegations against our IDF soldiers. We are going and protecting them and helping them to push back these false allegations, this blood libel against the state of Israel. And we'll continue full force. We're expanding. Shurat HaDin is growing, and I'm calling everyone to join this fight. It's a tremendous fight for the Jewish state, and we'll do it together because only together we can win this battle.
Exactly, only together. My final question, are any of your children following in your footsteps, that they've joined you, come on board in an official way? Or they've seen
I don't know yet. I don't.
The stress that it's caused, they've said, no, thank you, we'll go and be a doctor or something else.
So first of all, I'm pushing them to go and do something different. I had enough living in my house and learning and having this experience. And my oldest is an officer in 8200, so I don't know what direction he will take. My daughter that just took the bar doesn't want to become a lawyer, so she's not going to be part of it. But let's see what the triplets will do, what the 18 years old will do. but let's give them the chance. They are on their own, and I respect anything they want to do.
Amen. Nitsana Darshan-Leitner, you are phenomenal. What Shurat HaDin is doing is phenomenal. We salute you. We thank you for everything that you are doing for Am Yisrael, for Eretz Israel. What you are doing is incredible, and we thank you for everything that you do. And thank you so much also. You are a very busy person for giving up this half an hour time to speak to us, to speak to our viewers of the Monday Motivation Spotlight. And to our viewers, I'm sure that you have found this eye-opening, inspiring. I'm Lesley Kaplan. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you to our sponsors, Eggert & Cohen Insurance, and to Lali's Flower Boutique in Jerusalem. And we will see you next week on the Monday Motivation Spotlight. Thank you again, Nitsana. Bye-bye.
My pleasure.